All right, tonight we're going to talk about being heavenly minded. Tell the person next to you, you got to be heavenly minded. Man, and when I talk about being heavenly minded, I mean you got to think like heaven, not think about heaven. Did you hear what I said? You got to think like heaven, not think about heaven. We're not talking about that. And the tagline, it is taking authority over my earthly thinking. Taking authority over my earthly thinking. How many people know that sometimes your thinking is jacked up? I like to call it the stinking thinking. When your thinking gets you in a bad place, right? You know what? I went scuba diving and I had all kinds of problems with everything. And I even missed a couple dives because this equipment broke and that broke and this broke. And you know what I did? I got happy. You know why? Because I love God and I love my life. I'm not going to let situations and circumstances affect my life. Romans chapter 12, verse 2. You've heard this verse many times, but I'm going to break it down for you maybe in a way that you've never heard it. Do not conform any longer to the pattern of this world, but be what? Transformed. How are we transformed? By the renewing of your mind. Okay, so if we're going to be transformed, the way that we're transformed is by renewing our mind, right? Okay, what are we renewing our mind from? Look at the first part of the verse. The pattern of this world. No longer conform to the patterns of this world. What is it talking about? The way they think. Don't think the way the world thinks, but be transformed. How do I get transformed? By renewing your mind, by thinking in a different way. If you think like the world, you are of the world. It doesn't matter if you don't drink and you don't smoke and you don't chew tobacco. If you think like the neighbors, you're like the neighbors. They're just having more fun than you. And they're going to get lung cancer before you if they don't stop smoking. Amen? So in this verse, we're being commanded to not think like the world, but to be transformed by the renewing of our mind. And I like this. It says, then you'll be able to test and approve what God's will is. His good, pleasing, and perfect. How many people want to live the will of God? There's only one thing in between you and God's will for your life, and it's you. And so you have to make up your mind today that I'm not going to think about the things on earth. I'm going to start to focus my mind so that I think like heaven. Verse 13, if you are wise and understand God's ways, prove it by living an honorable life, doing good works with the humility that comes from wisdom. But, say but, if you are bitterly jealous and there is selfish ambition in your heart, don't cover up the truth with boasting and lying. For jealousy and selfishness are not God's kind of wisdom. Such things are earthly, unspiritual, and demonic. For wherever there is jealousy and selfish ambition, there you will find disorder and evil of every kind. Right here in this verse, it's talking about if you're jealous and you have selfish ambition, you're thinking like the world. The earthly minded person says, I think, I feel, I want. Jesus did the opposite in the garden when he said, if there's any way, take this cup from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but your will be done. That's heavenly minded. That's being a person that's thinking with the mind of heaven. Colossians 3, 1-3 says this. Since you have been raised to new life with Christ, set your sights on the realities of heaven, where Christ sits in the place of honor at God's right hand. Listen to this, verse 2. Think about the things of heaven, not the things of earth. For you died to this life, and your real life is hidden with Christ in God. You see that? See, if you're so focused on what's happening here, you're going to have the world's earthbound perspective. But if you take a step up and you think about the things of heaven, and you think like heaven, and you see it from God's perspective, you'll see that things are looking really good. Because Romans 8:28 says, all things work together for good for those that love him and are called according to his purposes. And so it all matters if you're a part of that group or if you're a part of this group. If you're a part of this group, you look and say, well, that didn't work out really good for me personally today. But I know that ultimately all things are going to work together for good for those who love him. That's me. Amen. Is that you? And those who are called according to his purposes. That's me. Is that you? So when you say, God, I want what you want, and I want your will to be done on earth as it is in heaven. That's what I want. Then you can look at a situation from a different perspective. Not selfish, but from God's perspective and say, I want to think like the Lord. I want to see what he's seen in this situation. And you'll see a lot of immature people running around with their emotions all over the place. Tonight, more than wanting to teach you something, I want you to understand something. I want you to understand, I don't want you to take this in a negative way. I don't want anybody to come under condemnation, but I do want you to come under conviction and the hope that you can change. But you are who you are today and the way you are because of the way you think. It's nobody's fault. You are not the victim. Amen? If you can throw off the world's pattern of thinking and be changed or transformed by changing the way you think, it's impossible to not fulfill your potential in the Lord. But if you continue to live a life that's selfish, based on I think, I feel, and I want, you'll end up like everybody else. Because honestly, guys, that's how everybody lives. They just wake up and all they want to do is get. Even when they give, it's for the purpose of feeling good. It's not for the purpose of virtue. Love is a virtue. We love for the sake of love because it's worth it. Not based on what we get back or how we feel. But too many people, even their Christianity is based on how they feel. We're not going to live according to how we feel. We need to change our mind. We're not going to be selfish. We're going to raise our vision. What makes us different from the world? That we're born again. We have the DNA of Christ, the last Adam. And we have the thinking of the heavenly man, the last Adam. Not my will, but your will be done. Man, that's Christianity right there.